They said I should be grateful, that $50,000 was more than enough. But tell me, how do you stay grateful when your own blood gets 31 million? That's when I realized something was wrong. Deeply, painfully wrong. I grew up believing we were one family. 4 kids, same father, same home, same last name. We had our fights, sure, but Mom always said, family doesn't count money. We count love. I believed that until the will reading. That day, the air in that lawyer's office felt colder than winter. The walls smelled of old books and secrets. And my siblings. They sat there like royalty, smirking, whispering, confident they already knew what was coming. Dad had passed just 3 weeks earlier. I was still trying to breathe through the grief. I kept replaying his last words to me. Take care of your heart, not just your wallet. At the time, I thought it was his way of comforting me. Now I know. He was trying to warn me. When the lawyer opened that envelope and started reading, my world began to tilt. To my beloved children, I leave my estate, my businesses, and my properties. I felt proud for a moment. Proud to be part of that sentence. Until he read my name. To my youngest, Daniel, I leave a sum of $50,000. $50,000. I blinked, waiting for the rest. There had to be more, right? But there wasn't. My brothers got millions in stock shares, companies, land. My sister got the lake house, the penthouse, the art collection, and I got the price of a used car. The silence that followed was louder than thunder. My oldest brother coughed, not out of pity but to hide a laugh. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. I asked quietly, "Is this a mistake?" The lawyer shook his head. "The will was signed by your father himself." That moment cracked something inside me. Because my father wasn't just rich. He was the kind of man who taught generosity. He built schools, donated hospitals, saved lives, and somehow, he left me almost nothing. I didn't understand it. I couldn't. That night I sat in my car, holding the letter, reading it over and over. Each word felt like a knife dipped in confusion. Maybe I'd done something wrong. Maybe I disappointed him somehow. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "No, this isn't about you." The next day, I visited the lawyer again. I asked for a copy of the full will, every detail, every note. He hesitated, then said, "Your father attached a private letter, for you only." My heart stopped. A letter. He handed me a small sealed envelope. My name written in my father's handwriting. Shaky, but familiar. I remember my fingers trembling as I tore it open. It began simply, "My dear Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I owe you the truth." My chest tightened. The money, the inheritance, the division, none of it was about worth. It was about truth. The truth you deserve to know, even if it hurts. I froze. You've always felt different, haven't you? That wasn't your imagination. I remember whispering aloud, "What do you mean, Dad?" My eyes scanned faster. "The reason you got what you did is because you are not my biological son." The words hit harder than any slap. I reread them, again and again, but they didn't change. Not my son, not my son. I sat there for hours, staring at the paper, feeling my entire identity collapsing in on itself. Everything I believed about who I was, where I came from, gone in a single sentence. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear that letter apart, but I didn't, because one thing didn't make sense. If I wasn't his son, why raise me as one? Why treat me with love all my life, and only reveal it after death? And, most importantly, who was my real father? That question started burning inside me like fire. I didn't know it then, but finding the answer would uncover a secret bigger than money, blood, or betrayal itself. That was the day I stopped being the forgotten child and started becoming the one who'd uncover everything. I didn't sleep that night. The letter sat on my desk like a ticking bomb, whispering questions I couldn't silence. Who was my real father? Why did Mom never tell me? And why did he, the man I called Dad, decide to reveal it only after he was gone? By sunrise, I wasn't crying anymore. I was cold, determined. So I drove to my mother's house. She opened the door, still in her robe, pretending to be surprised. "Oh, Daniel, what are you doing here so early?" I didn't answer. I just handed her the letter. She froze. Her fingers tightened around the paper. Her eyes flicked across the words. And when they reached, "You are not my biological son," her face changed. Not shock, not sadness, just fear. That was the moment I knew. She already knew everything. "You knew," I whispered. She didn't reply. Just a long, heavy silence that said more than words ever could. Finally, she said, "He promised me this day would never come." I stared at her. "This day? You mean the day I find out the truth about who I am?" She nodded slowly, tears building but never falling. "He loved you, Daniel. He really did, but he thought the truth would destroy you." I felt my hands shaking. "Destroy me? He already did." She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. "Who is he, Mom?" I asked. "Who's my real father?" She hesitated, looking away like the walls could protect her from the question. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "He's someone from my past, someone I thought I'd left behind forever." That wasn't enough. I needed more. "Who?" I demanded. She looked up at me, her lips parting to say a name. But then she stopped. Her eyes darted toward the window, and for a moment it looked like she was scared of something, or someone. "I can't," she whispered. "If I tell you, it'll destroy everything." That's when I realized. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting him. I left without another word. But my heart was burning. That night, I started digging. I pulled out every old photo album, every birth document, every hospital record. And that's when I noticed something strange. My birth certificate didn't have a hospital name, just a handwritten line that said, "Home birth." That made no sense. All my siblings were born in private hospitals. So why me? I went to the family lawyer again, pretending I needed more paperwork about the inheritance. While he searched, I noticed a folder on his desk with my last name on it. Wright Family Archives. When he stepped out to make a call, I opened it. And what I found changed everything. Inside was a sealed envelope marked Confidential 1997 Paternity File, the year I was born. My heart pounded so loud I could barely think. I opened it. There it was. A DNA test. 2 names on the page, Daniel Wright and Edward Cole. The results, 99.9% match. Edward Cole. That name hit me like lightning, because Edward Cole wasn't just anyone. He was my father's best friend, his business partner, and the man who'd sat right next to us at every family dinner for 20 years. He'd held me when I was a baby. He'd taught me to fish. He'd called me Champ every time he saw me, all while knowing I was his son. I felt sick. Everything inside me wanted to scream. But then something colder took over. Clarity. Now I understood why my father left me only $50,000. Why he looked at me differently that last year of his life. He knew. He knew the truth all along. And maybe he couldn't forgive her. I left the lawyer's office shaking, the papers still in my hand. Outside, the world looked the same. Cars passing, people laughing, birds singing. But inside, everything had changed. That night, I sat in my car outside Edward Cole's mansion. The lights were still on. Through the window, I saw him, older now, gray hair, whiskey in hand, living his perfect life. He had everything, a family, a business, a name that opened doors. And me, I was the secret he buried decades ago. But not anymore. That's when I whispered to myself, they thought I'd stay silent. They thought I'd stay broken. I looked at his house one last time and said, they were wrong. The next day, I started planning. Not revenge, not chaos, just truth. Because the truth, when it finally comes out, hurts louder than any scream. And I was done staying quiet. The next morning, I woke up with a single thought echoing in my head: no more lies. I'd spent my whole life living under other people's versions of the truth. Now it was time to tell mine. But the truth isn't something you can just shout. It has to be delivered, carefully, precisely, so it cuts exactly where it should. I started with the one person who'd never doubted me, my sister, Leah. She was the only one who had ever treated me like an equal, even after the will. We met at a cafe, far from town. She smiled when she saw me. "Hey, stranger, you look like you haven't slept in days." I didn't waste time. "I found something," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. She frowned, opening it slowly, and as her eyes scanned the DNA results, the color drained from her face. "Daniel, what is this?" "It's proof," I said quietly. "I'm not Dad's son. I'm Edward Cole's." For a few seconds she just stared at me, her lips parting like she wanted to speak but couldn't. Finally she whispered, "That's impossible." "I wish it was." She looked up, tears in her eyes. "Does Mom know?" "She's known all along." Leah covered her mouth, shaking her head. I could see the heartbreak in her expression, the kind that only comes when your whole world starts to crumble. Then she said something that froze me. "Dad must have found out before he died. That's why he changed the will." I nodded. Yeah, he didn't just divide money. He divided truth. For the first time, Leah didn't look at me like her brother. She looked at me like a stranger, and that hurt more than anything. But before I left, she grabbed my hand and said, "Daniel, don't do anything stupid." I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew what I had to do. That evening, I went to Edward Cole's company headquarters. He was there, of course, still the same man everyone respected. The philanthropist, the business genius, the family friend. I waited outside the lobby until he came down with his assistant. When our eyes met, I saw it instantly: recognition and guilt. "Daniel," he said, forcing a smile. "It's been a while. How are you holding up after your father's passing?" I looked him dead in the eye. "My father?" I said softly. "Which one?" His face went pale. I stepped closer. "You know, it's funny. You've been at every Christmas dinner, every birthday. You watched me grow up, all while pretending." He didn't respond. He just stared, his hand tightening around his briefcase. "I found the file," I said. "The DNA test. It's over, Edward." The silence between us was deafening. Then, finally, he whispered, "Your mother made me promise never to tell you. And you agreed. You just watched me live a lie?" His voice broke a little. "I was protecting you." "No," I said. "You were protecting yourself." He looked around, nervous. "Daniel, this isn't the place. Let's talk somewhere private." I almost laughed. "Private? Like how you kept me for 26 years. He sighed heavily. "Please, let me explain." But I was done listening to explanations. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, his perfect world suddenly cracking at the edges. That night I went back to the lawyer's office. He wasn't expecting me, but I wasn't there for him. I was there for justice. I told him I wanted a full statement documenting my paternity discovery. He hesitated, saying, "Daniel, this could become a scandal." I just smiled faintly. "Good." Because the truth deserves to make noise. Within days, the whispers began spreading. Corporate dinners, charity events, social circles, everyone started talking. "Did you hear about Edward Cole? They say he had a child with his business partner's wife. 30 years of friendship. Ruined." Edward tried to contain it, of course. He even came to my apartment one night begging me not to go public. He looked smaller that day. weaker, like the truth had already taken its toll. He said, "Daniel, I'll give you anything you want. Just don't destroy my family." I looked at him, calm, almost cold. "Money," I said. "You think that's what I want? You think $31 million fixes what you broke?" He lowered his head. "Then what do you want?" I stepped closer and said the words he feared most. "I want the truth to have your name on it." He flinched, and for a second I saw something real in his eyes. Remorse, maybe. But it was too late for that, because the truth wasn't his to bury anymore. When the story broke, it hit every headline. Business tycoon's secret son revealed after inheritance scandal. The world that had praised him began tearing him apart. Investors pulled out. His reputation shattered. And my siblings, they looked at me like I was the villain. Maybe I was. But villains are just heroes who ran out of patience. Still, even with the chaos, I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel victory, just silence. A heavy, empty silence that came after the storm, because I'd uncovered the truth, but I'd also destroyed what was left of my family. And that's when it hit me. The truth doesn't set you free. It just shows you who's really chained. The days that followed felt unreal. Every news channel had my name somewhere in its crawl. Every social media post had opinions about my life, my story, my pain. Some called me brave, others called me cruel. But none of them knew what it felt like to wake up and not even know who you are anymore. At first, I thought the truth would make me lighter, free. But it didn't. It just left an ache that nothing could quiet. My siblings stopped answering my calls. My mother, she disappeared from the spotlight, ashamed, hiding behind drawn curtains and whispered apologies. And Edward. He lost everything. His company removed him from the board. His family left him. All the power he once had vanished overnight. I watched it all happen, and instead of satisfaction, I felt empty. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at the ceiling late at night, asking the same question over and over. Was it worth it? The truth is, I didn't know anymore. Because revenge doesn't heal you, it only changes what hurts. One evening, I drove out to the cemetery. It was quiet, windless, just me and the sound of my shoes brushing against the gravel. I stopped in front of my father's grave. The man who raised me, the man who lied to me, the man who still, somehow, felt like Dad. I stood there for a long time, my voice low. "You knew everything, didn't you?" I said. "You looked me in the eye every day, knowing I wasn't yours. And you still loved me anyway." A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. "I hated you for what you did, for the money, for the silence. But now..." My voice cracked. "I think I finally understand. Because he hadn't punished me. He'd protected me, from the shame, from the gossip, from the name that could have followed me my whole life. He didn't cut me out of his will to be cruel. He did it to make sure I had something clean to start with. $50,000. At first, it felt like an insult, but now it felt like a message. This is your freedom, son. Use it to find yourself." I knelt beside his grave, the cold stone pressing against my hand, and whispered, "I forgive you." For the first time in months, I felt a strange calm spread through me, like my chest had been unclenched. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was close. The next week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside was a short note written in shaky handwriting. "I've lost everything, Daniel. My family won't speak to me. My company's gone. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know. I always knew you were mine. Every time I saw you, I saw myself. I was proud, even when I couldn't say it. Edward." I sat there, reading it over and over, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger, just pity. He'd spent his entire life building an empire, only to lose the one thing that truly mattered: peace. I folded the letter and tucked it into my pocket. No reply, no closure, just quiet understanding. Because some truths don't need to be shouted anymore. They just need to rest. Months passed. I moved to another city. Started over. No inheritance, no mansion, no family name to hide behind. Just me, a small apartment, and a job that paid enough to survive. And, strangely, I was okay with that. I learned how to cook my own meals. I learned how to sleep without anger. And I learned something else, too. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what they did. It's about freeing yourself from carrying it forever. One night I walked along the waterfront. The air was cool, calm. I looked up at the stars and whispered, I thought I was robbed of everything, but maybe I was just given a chance to start again. I smiled. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't a forced smile. It was real. Because that's what truth does. It burns everything fake until only the real you remains. And as I watched the city lights shimmer on the water, I thought about all the things I'd lost, and all the things I'd found. I'd lost a fortune, a family, and a name. But I found something they could never buy. Myself. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. And peace. Peace is the loudest revenge there is.